Welcome to this week's episode of Gods and Monsters by E.E. King, read by me, E.E. King. Each week, MetaStellar has an episode of Gods and Monsters on YouTube and in print. And today, episode 10, The Bucket Orchid. The story until now, more or less. Gabrielle, a vampire hybrid, is living in San Francisco as a DJ at the Club Vamp. He has a hypnotic ability over vampires, making them lose track of time, and in the morning light, they turn to dust, leaving only rainbow crystal fangs, which he makes into necklaces. He begins growing orchids. River and his pet crow have also moved to San Francisco. River gets a job in JoJo's Happy Bakery. Although he's unaware of it, his Uncle Ryo's ghost talks to him. Chapter 26, Gabrielle, San Francisco, 1981. Ariel. 2 nights later, Gabrielle sees another lucid beauty on the dance floor. River's leaning against the bar, melting ice and diluted scotch in a small glass before him. Gabrielle doesn't even bother whispering into the mic. He simply opens the door of the booth and motions to River. Wordlessly, River takes the playlist. There's a slightly larger crowd than usual tonight. Perhaps they have assembled to watch the dance, unearthly, lovely, and deadly. Her name is Ariel. She's tall and dark, skin like polished stone, eyes rich, bottomless amber. Besides that, all is as before. Sex is followed by dawn, ash, and cappuccino, and the orchids flourish. Though orchids usually only bloom once or twice a year, Gabrielle's blossom year-round. They cover his window like beautiful nightmares, filtering the sunlight that falls onto the crystal canines. Chapter 27, River, Hillsburg, 1960. The Bucket Orchid. Every orchid, Ryo tells River, has a unique pollinator. Its own very special kind of orchid bee, and every orchid has a different, weird way to attract its pollinator. The bucket orchid secretes fragrant oil into its pouting, pale-shaped lip. Male orchid bees use this perfume as a calling card, an invitation to females to join them in a courtship dance. The oil is more potent than oysters, rarer than Chanel No. 5, sweeter than dark chocolate, at least to the bees. In their eagerness to collect the scent, males topple into the fluid-filled vessel. Ryo bugs his eyes out, flailing his hands like tiny wings. River laughs. Struggling to escape, the bee finds that the lip is lined with smooth downward pointing hairs. They force him backward. They are impossible to climb. Just when hope is lost, he discovers small, hairless knobs. The orchid has provided a ladder to freedom. The knob leads to a spout. As the bee tries to squeeze through, Ryo wriggles as if he were trapped. The spout tightens, gluing a pack of pollen against the bee's thorax. It might hold the bee captive for 45 minutes until the glue is set. When he is released, the bee continues searching for a mate, but another orchid lures him with the scent of passion. The bee again falls into a bucket. As he fights to get away, the bee's pollen is thrust against the stigma, which is the female part of the orchid. The orchid is fertilized. The bee frustrated. It sounds, River says, like the orchid is smarter than the bee. He considers. I'd still rather be a bee, though. I'd like to be able to fly. Wouldn't we all, little buddy? Wouldn't we all? Says Ryo, patting River's head. Chapter 28, Gabrielle, San Francisco, 1981. Conception. After his cappuccino, Gabriel visits a neighborhood hardware store. There's an image in his mind. He wants to make it real. Gabriel wanders narrow aisles hung with shiny doorknobs and brass hinges. He passes cubbies filled with nails, screws, and washers. Even the large tattooed men who normally puff up like bullfrogs and try and fill the aisle with testosterone retreat when they see Gabriel. He buys some chains, random fastening, and a welding gun. On his way home, he spots a dark doorway. Mike's corner pawn shop, cash, fast, gold, jewelry, guns and watches. Get top dollar here. A stairway leads down below the street, ending at a weathered wood glass-framed door. The glass has been sloppily coated with burgundy paint. Mike's is scrawled in gold glitter on the door. The glitter has dripped. Gabriel pushes open the door. Inside, the windows are covered with heavy cardboard hung with cobwebs. The shop is lit by neon signs, electric blues, lime bright greens, hot reds, brilliant yellows, and sunset magenta. They pulse and glow like jellyfish, providing a constantly shifting and natural light. They must come from a variety of countries. Many spell out unintelligible words and alien characters. Mike lolls beside an antique cash register. His white belly hangs over soiled jeans, providing a monitor for the light show. He wears a faded t-shirt. It once featured a busty blonde cartoon on a motorbike, but now only the blonde's red smiling lips and the biker's handlebars remain. Mike's hair is gray, thin, and greasy, hanging on each side of his veiny red face. He has tiny, watery blue eyes. Meaty, rough hands grip a small, dirty paper cup. It's full of dark red liquid. It looks like wine. Howdy, he spits, the greeting damply at Gabriel. Mike is missing his canines. The walls of the shop are full of glass cases overflowing with a chaos of junk and jewelry. Sparkling sad wedding rings and pocket watches, the flotsam and jetsam of the lost and hopeless. Overhead hang racks of rifles. Two large antlered deer watch Gabriel out of brown glass eyes. From a bowl of miscellany, Gabriel picks out some bits of chain, silver, copper, and gold. He finds 12 small, round, faceted amethysts, a pile of needle-sharp rose quartz, and a foreign coin of unknown origin. The coin is silver, banded with gold, circled by strange symbols. Gabriel is drawn to it. He scoops it up, cradling it. It nestles warm and heavy in Gabriel's palm. Mike never puts prices on anything, except the few items he doesn't want to sell. These he labels with exorbitantly fantastical figures, figuring if anyone wants them bad enough to pay much more than top dollar, they can have them. Mike is a haggler. He likes the contact, however inconsequential. He likes to argue. He likes to win. Gabriel brings his findings to the counter and hands Mike $60. Mike opens his mouth, looks into Gabriel's endless eyes, and is silent. Gabriel returns home. In the basement, he sets up a workbench and lights. Marco, the manager, sees. He knows that he should say something, forbid Gabriel to use the space, or demand extra rent, perhaps. But he says nothing. Gabriel spends his afternoon fashioning jewelry, wielding together chains, triple helixes of gold, silver, and copper DNA. He adds tiny purple clusters of amethysts, like angled grapes, delicate rose quartz, dangle like sunrise crystals. In the center of each, he hangs a single tooth. Even underground, the teeth trap sunlight, separating it into colored fragments that dance around the basement. He is surrounded by rainbows, this man who cannot see the blue of the sky or the brown of the earth. Gabriel makes a chain for himself, but instead of a tooth for the centerpiece, he drills a hole in the coin and hangs it around his neck. Chapter 29, Gabriel, San Francisco, 1981, quitting. Gabriel has become a regular at Mike's. No matter the hour, Mike is always there, always in the same faded, grungy t-shirt and jeans. Gabriel imagines he can see the big blonde's lips fading each time he visits, until all that is left are her teeth. In spite of his size, Gabriel never sees Mike eat. Instead, he constantly, surreptitiously sips dark wine from a paper cup. After working at the Vamp, Gabriel is familiar with red bane, bulbous nose, and bloodshot eyes. The lack of teeth is more common in meth users than alcoholics, but Mike is too heavy to be a meth head. Gabriel begins frequenting gem shows, picking up agates, garnets, and an occasional piece of red glass, but soon he stops. He's never happy with the results of pieces made from findings purchased anywhere but from Mike's. One night, Gabriel wanders into the Vamp and realizes he is done. He needs to spend his time creating. He is driven by that most basic desire, a craving as strong as love, as driving as death. He is propelled by the need to reproduce. It is creation, greed, and birth. Some produce babies, small imperfect copies of themselves. Others gather objects, as if mansions filled with possessions could stave off death. Artists create pictures or books, sending soul, imagination, and ideas into the world, fancying them less finite than flesh. Gabriel needs his crystal teeth to hang like needles of light around living necks. This appetite is closer to an emotion than any he has ever felt. He drifts up to Frankie. I quit, he says. Although his voice is a whisper, it echoes around the bar. It murmurs into ears, the breath-stirring tiny hairs on the back of customers' necks. It pierces through the slow, flat pop song coming from the booth. You can't quit, Frankie protests. I need at least 2 weeks. Oh, one, bare minimum. I got to find someone. You can't just leave me in the lurch. The guy before me didn't give you notice, did he? Frankie wants to complain. He wants to protest. He wants to mention how good he's been to Gabriel, to remind him how he's never said a word, even when Gabriel has walked off the job 2 nights out of 5. But he does not. River's here. He always is. He can do it. Gabriel pushes through the door and is gone. Frankie turns to discover River behind him. But before Frankie can offer him a job, River has disappeared. Into the dark after Gabriel. Thank you for listening. Join us next week when some nights when fog is banished by sea breezes and moon shines brilliantly, bleaching the city white, River's hair rises, caressed by unseen electric fingers. Above the sounds of the city, a mournful howl ascends, calling to a forgotten past and an unknown future. Thank you for joining. See you next week.